joining us now is their superintendent, Kenneth Gutman. Ken, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tyler. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's been a couple weeks since we've last talked. How are you? How are your teachers? How's your staff and faculty?
We're doing well. I think everybody's doing really well, adapting to, I guess, the cliched new normal and doing what's best for children.
So it's also Teacher Appreciation Week. Have you had parents, families showing their appreciation in different ways for your teachers? And if you have some examples of that, could just give us maybe some stories you may have received from teachers in Walled Lake.
You bet. So we've had a number of parents reach out on social media, and that's been a lot of it. It's more difficult to do more than that right now. But they've reached out on social media. They've sent emails and reached out to our teachers to just thank them in any way they can. I know a great example of an administrative group representing or honoring our teachers. We had our Walled Lake Western High School staff drive around and put a lawn sign on every teacher's lawn and talk about their warrior pride. So that was a nice touch as well. It's not the same as it would normally be where you have parents dropping off lunches and doing ceremonies and all of that, but they're doing whatever they can. Our teachers are phenomenal. They're phenomenal, and I wish we could all do more for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We have great teachers all throughout Oakland County and all the school districts that we've talked about, Walled Lake absolutely included. I've had a chance to talk with some teachers from Walled Lake over my time at Civic Center TV and in our efforts to give the news about education in our community, and they do fantastic work there. There's been a lot of change, and the change has kind of come in different ways throughout this process for teachers, for students, for administrators. What has your staff learned during this process?
Well, I can tell you first what we've all learned is that teachers are indispensable and there's no replacement for face-to-face instruction. But what they've learned is there are still ways to deliver authentic instruction to children to do the best to meet their needs. Our teachers care. I think we're at an advantage at this point in the year, knowing that our teachers already had established relationships with our students, so they knew which buttons to push to help students be successful. I think it would have been more challenging to start the year like this. So they've learned that online instruction works, although it is not what face-to-face instruction is. They've learned that this is a community that continues to value education. The support from parents and community members has been resounding. And I know it's like that throughout the other districts in the area, West Bloomfield, Bloomfield Hills, Avondale, all those other listener groups as well, and those who are watching the show. Look, this is an area that supports education, and we've all been overwhelmed with the support.
You mentioned that the relationships that the teachers had already established with these kids as being critical in their ability to transition so quickly to virtual learning. How have those relationships changed or even improved possibly during this time? And what does that do? What does that mean for the future of these students and their education and for these teachers and how they maybe modify how they teach in the future?
So I don't know that it's necessarily improved relationships. I think it's changed them a little bit. I can tell you that there's some vulnerability when you're sitting there on your couch or at your kitchen table and everyone sees that's where you're sitting, right? So there's some vulnerability there when a dog walks into the frame. And that vulnerability does lead to improved relationships, but I still think you can't replace face-to-face. Total online instruction isn't the answer. What was the second part of your question, Tyler? I apologize.
My second part was just how do you see the relationships
future of
improving?
education,
Yeah.
right?
With those
So I
relationships
think that, my first thought, which much to the dismay of many of our students is, why do we have snow days that don't count as snow days or that count as days off of school when we can deliver instruction on snow days? Not something any student wants to hear, perhaps not something every staff member wants to hear. But if we were to have a snow day, why could we not deliver instruction virtually on that day and not lose a day? So particularly in a bad winter, that has some implications for the future as well. The other is as we begin school in the fall, assuming we begin school in the fall, which is an entirely different subject, perhaps we look at some sort of hybrid model depending on where we are with this pandemic.
So just talking about that, you touch on fall next year. Let's talk a little bit about the future. We'll come back to some other things later on. But as far as the future of school after this, with all we've learned, with the way that things are changing and with the new normal that we're about to embark on as we come out of this crisis, if school is in person again in the fall, How will elementary school, middle school, high school look different, operate different in Walled Lake and or even in other school districts from your communication?
Thank you. So when you look at the way our schools are constructed in this country, they're not constructed for students to be 6 feet apart. They're not constructed for there to be social distancing. They're not constructed for students to eat in classrooms necessarily. And there are contractual implications with all of this. So we're looking at three options right now. One of them is we open school as normal and do our best. I don't know that doing our best follows any of the guidelines. You can't have 12 students on a bus in a classroom and be able to run a school district, especially with knowing that we'll have fewer resources in the fall than we have now because of the state budget. Another option we're looking at is perhaps a hybrid model. Some days in school, some days online instruction. And a third model, which I hope is not the case, but that would be total virtual instruction again. So much of it will depend on what executive orders exist at the time. It will depend on where we are with this pandemic. And of course, number one above all else is keeping everyone safe, students, staff, and community.
And how would you imagine that hybrid model? It's one of your three options you discussed, hybrid of in-person and virtual. Would that be some days your entire school or certain classes or certain grades are at home and some are in school? Is it going to be half of the class comes in, half the class does virtual 1 week and then switches off the next week? How would that work?
Yeah, Tyler, we don't know yet. We're playing with all of those ideas. We just want to be prepared. We would love for everyone to be back, but if we have to go virtually, you may have A days and B days, right? So half the class is there, half isn't. It's easier in an elementary school than it is at a high school. You look at our high schools, 3 comprehensive large high schools with 1,400 to 1,600, 1,700 students. Our cafeterias, our hallways, our transportation. It's really difficult to do social distancing. So we would have to find a way to have fewer staff and students, fewer students in the building. Of course, I still have concerns about safety of our staff, and that's something we have to work out as well.
Kev Gutman, Superintendent of the Walled Lake Consolidated School District, joining us on the Megacast on our family of stations on TV on Birmingham Municipal Access, Civic Center TV, and on the radio on 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, and WAHS 89.5 Avondale Community Radio. So Ken, right now a big issue is how do we honor this senior class? Are there any plans in motion right now for some sort of a graduation ceremony or something else along those lines for these seniors?
You bet there are, Tyler. And, I have a son who's a high school senior as well. And I will tell you that I think it's too bad that we're dealing with it. That's putting it mildly, that they're experiencing this in their senior year. I think we all remember our senior years. These were good times. And so we want to make sure that we do honor them appropriately. We have rescheduled our in-person graduation ceremony to August 2nd. It was supposed to be May 31st. And so we are hoping, we're at Eastern Michigan University. The plan, if we are allowed to proceed, would be to have more time in between. We do all 3 commencements on the same day. So we would have more time in between for cleaning. If that can't happen, we may be doing a virtual commencement. At the same time, we're looking at an activity, whether it's a parade, a drive-in, something to make sure that we do have something to recognize our students with decorating cars, keeping people away from each other socially. That's another option. We're still planning on moving on with our honors convocations and our scholarship ceremonies, although those will all be done virtually as well. Our high school principals and I and my deputy superintendent met this week, and we're looking at all options to make sure that these kids, these young adults, get exactly what they deserve considering the circumstances.
I have a family of teachers on my dad's side of the family who have been sharing videos on social media of their school district and other school districts doing their part in the meantime to show appreciation and honor their seniors while they're still in school and while things are still kind of in flux for graduation, similar to how you've seen teachers be shown their appreciation this week during Teacher Appreciation Week. What have you seen possibly from the teachers to the students, from students to students, to show that appreciation for the seniors while they're going through this unprecedented final year of their high school experience?
Yeah, so good question, Tyler. I have seen a lot of virtual shout outs from teachers, from staff, to students. I've seen that from administrators to teachers and students. A lot of it's being done virtually. And again, you see people putting out yard signs, you see people doing drive-bys, people, by people's houses and honoring them in that way. None of that replaces what we normally have, but it's a really nice touch at this time. And so we're going to continue to look for ideas. I saw there was a smaller town where I'm sure you've seen this, where they had light posts and they had all of the seniors' pictures on the light posts. We would love to do something like that, but we'll have about 1,100 graduates this year, and we don't have 1,100 light posts. So that's why we're looking at other ideas.
Yeah, there's always ideas in motion, and there's been so much collaboration between other school districts during this time. Have you been talking with other superintendents? Have your principals been talking with other high school principals around the local area, around the state, about ways that maybe you can integrate some of their ideas, or they can integrate some of yours for honoring their seniors or continuing on the school year?
Absolutely. So I've been on calls with Tri-County superintendents, Wayne, Oakland, Macomb. I've been on calls with the Michigan superintendent group, with the state superintendent. We've been on calls with the governor. We've been collaborating with students, particularly, or with superintendents, particularly in Oakland County, as have our principals. In fact, I was just on a call with a school in Korea with Pat Watson from Bloomfield Hills and a number of superintendents and educators from around the area to think about how we reopen schools. The collaboration's been really, really strong. And it's been probably one of the best things to come out of this, is it's forced us to become closer together as cohort groups of principals and teachers and superintendents to make sure that we're sharing best practices with each other.
What's been the parents' reaction, or how have they been holding up from your knowledge during this, as they continue to adjust to kind of being a teacher's assistant sort of for their students at home?
So our reaction from parents has probably been 10-1, really happy with the way things have gone, but we're certainly sensitive to the fact that this is tough, that our teachers spend years learning how to teach. They spend years learning, honing their craft, and to be able to replicate that as a parent is difficult, particularly when you may have a job as well, or you may have lost your job and you're dealing with that. So we recognize everyone's in a different situation, and while our parents have been supportive, we also know if there's a day where your child can't work because there's just too much going on, we get it. We're human first. Take care of your basic needs first. School will still be there.
So you mentioned collaborating with other superintendents locally and even across the world in Korea, and I think that's an interesting angle to just touch on briefly. Ken Gutman, superintendent of the Walled Lake Consolidated School District. What similarities, what have you learned from those schools internationally that you've been in contact with and applied here? What similarities are there between what American schools are doing to adjust to this crisis and what a school, for example, in Korea, like you said, is doing to adjust to this?
Oh, absolutely. And so we have one with Denmark next week as well. And Pat Watson set these calls up and invited a number of us. So I want to give him a shout out for that. The call we had this morning, which I had to get off of to get on, here on the Megacast, which of course nothing would come before the Megacast. You need to know that, Tyler.
Thank you.
Is that they're looking to reopen school right now. And we wanted to gain as many lessons as we could. There are more similarities because it's an international school in Korea. And they're dealing with the social distancing issues. They're looking at a staggered start, bringing back groups of students a little bit at a time. They're nervous about all of the same things we're nervous about: the cleaning, the proximity, how you deliver education, how people feel safe. They worry about their classrooms as well, how you keep people apart and still deliver meaningful instruction. And think back to a kindergarten room there and a kindergarten room here. Social distancing isn't really a thing in kindergarten. So there are challenges ahead, and they share those with us.
And it's great to always learn and collaborate. You can learn a lot from other people, and during a crisis like this, you need to be working with other people and learning from others and communicating, because you're going through a similar struggle that they're going through, and they're going through it in a different way. There's always something you can learn that's from a different culture, from a different society even, that can be integrated into what you're doing and provide a lesson. So I think that's incredible what you and what other superintendents and school districts are doing. Ken Gutman, superintendent of the Walled Lake Consolidated School District. We're also joined by Walled Lake on their Facebook Live, and thank you, of course, for allowing us to do that once again this week. Before, just a few more minutes with you today, Ken, before I let you go, we can't help but touch on the coming budget issues that will definitely be affecting our schools. We spoke earlier this week with Senator Rosemary Bayer about the work that she's been doing, and others across the aisle in the legislature are doing to hopefully mitigate some of those issues. For Walled Lake's perspective, what is your school district doing to prepare to shoulder the burden of what this financial hit may be come fall?
Yeah, thank you. I was on a call with Senator Bayer and a bunch of other legislators and superintendents earlier this week, and the outlook isn't rosy for public schools, nor is it rosy for the state of Michigan when you look at budget shortfalls. On May 15th, there will be the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference. We're hoping to get better numbers then. But right now, to play it safe, we're projecting a reduction of $500 per student. To give you a sense, that takes us back all the way to 2008. Where we had such a huge reduction. Walled Lake Schools just this year was scheduled to get the money back that we had lost since 2008. So we would finally gain back the $470 reduction from then. It's devastating. And so at a time when we're looking at reducing class sizes because of social distancing, when you're looking to have 12 students in a classroom, a few students on a bus, when you're looking to do that, you simply can't afford it when you're looking at reducing. For us, $10.5 to $11 million. Well, that's a very arduous task. So we've had a number of budget meetings this week. We'll discuss the potential budget reductions with our board soon. Our associations have year after year given huge concessions, and we're so blessed to have them. I don't know how else we balance a budget right now. And so we'll continue to put students first, no matter what. But we also know that we have a very difficult situation financially ahead of us, which no one could have predicted. The governor not too long ago gave us the best potential budget we've seen in a dozen years, and we certainly know now that will not come to fruition.
And education is so critical, and hopefully the collaboration with the legislature and with the state turns this potentially very murky situation as far as the budget for education in the state is concerned into something a little bit more positive going forward. We'll know more about it in the coming weeks as that budget comes together. Ken Gutman, Superintendent of the Walled Lake Consolidated School District. Before I let you go, anything else that we maybe haven't touched on, or anything else you'd like to say before I let you go?
Well, I think you've covered it. I think you do a nice job, Tyler. It's nice talking to you this morning, and I'm happy to come back. I just feel so fortunate to work in a community, to interact with this great supportive community where parents, students, staff, and community members come together on behalf of children. And so we'll continue to fight the good fight. We're going to take care of our children each and every day.
Well, thank you, and keep doing that. Education is so critical to our future, especially in times like this where we need as much innovation, creativity, and perseverance going forward, and the education system plays a critical role in that. Kenneth Gutman, Superintendent of the Walled Lake Consolidated School District, joining us on the Megacast, Birmingham Area Municipal Access TV, Civic Center TV, Lakes FM 88.1, WBFH, the Biff, WAHS 89.5, Avondale Community Radio, and on the Facebook Live page of the Walled Lake Consolidated School District. Superintendent Gutman, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.